Okay, here's something weird. Female zebras produce milk for their babies, and humans can technically drink it. So why don't we? We drink cow milk, goats, sheep, camels, buffalo, even reindeer. But the zebra somehow never made the list. And it's not because zebra milk is poisonous. It's not because humans can't digest it. And it's not because nobody ever tried. So what happened? Why did humans look at a zebra, an animal closely related to the horse, and decide that this particular animal was absolutely not worth turning into a dairy farm? The answer gets surprisingly weird. First, there's something important about milk that we usually forget. Milk isn't one universal substance. Every mammal produces milk specifically for its own offspring. A seal produces extremely fatty milk because its baby needs to grow quickly in a freezing environment. A rabbit produces incredibly concentrated milk because its babies grow at an absurd rate. A human produces milk with a very different nutritional profile because human babies develop differently. And zebra milk has its own biological recipe. It's relatively low in fat compared with cow's milk and contains a considerable amount of lactose. So if you were somehow handed a glass of zebra milk, it wouldn't be some mysterious toxic liquid. It would simply be milk, just milk made for a zebra. And that immediately creates the first problem. There's no obvious nutritional reason humans needed it. Cows already gave us something extremely useful. Their milk is relatively rich in fat and protein, it's produced in substantial quantities, and cows can be raised in large groups. Once humans had cattle, there was very little reason to go searching for another species that could theoretically be milked. But maybe you're thinking, fine, then why didn't humans just domesticate zebras anyway? Because this is where zebras become extremely annoying. A cow has been living alongside humans for thousands of years. Those are two very different lifestyles. And the traits that make a zebra good at surviving in the wild are exactly the traits that make it terrible at becoming livestock. Zebras are highly alert. They react quickly to threats. They can run extremely fast. And when cornered, they can defend themselves violently. A zebra doesn't need to be stronger than a lion. It just needs to notice the lion early enough to escape. That means its nervous system is basically optimized for something moved. Is it dangerous? Run. That's useful when you're living in Africa, surrounded by predators. It's less useful when a farmer is trying to attach a milking machine to you. But here's the part people often misunderstand. Humans actually did try to tame zebras. There have been attempts to ride them, train them, and use them for transportation. Individual zebras can become accustomed to people. Some can even be trained surprisingly well. But one trained zebra doesn't mean you've domesticated zebras. That's the difference between taming and domestication. A tame animal learns to tolerate humans. A domesticated species has been genetically shaped over many generations. Humans repeatedly choose the animals that are calmer, easier to handle, more productive, and more cooperative. Those animals reproduce. Their offspring inherit some of those traits. Then humans select again, and again, and again. Eventually, the population itself changes. That's how you get modern livestock. The animal that once had to be captured and controlled becomes an animal that practically expects humans to take care of it. Zebras never went through that transformation. And that may have had a lot to do with their biology. Unlike cattle, zebras have never been particularly good candidates for being controlled in large groups. They're not just difficult individually. Their behavior makes large-scale management difficult. Imagine trying to run 1,000 zebra dairy farm. You've got fences, you have workers, you have food, you have expensive equipment. And somewhere in the middle of the field is a zebra thinking, absolutely not. Then it kicks the equipment, and now your dairy business is over. But there's another question. If zebra milk is edible, could we theoretically create a zebra dairy industry today? Technically, probably. Practically, it would be a terrible idea. And here's why. Milk production isn't just about whether an animal produces milk. You need enough milk. You need predictable production. You need animals that can reproduce reliably. You need to feed them. You need to handle them safely. You need to move them. You need to keep them healthy. And you need to do all of this at a cost that makes sense. Cows are incredibly efficient at this entire package. Zebras aren't. And there is an even bigger issue. A zebra's milk is being produced for a zebra foal. The mother isn't walking around thinking, I wonder how much milk I can produce for a human dairy company this year. Her body is producing exactly what her baby needs. Humans later took cattle and selectively bred them for enormous milk production. That's a completely different situation. Modern dairy cows are biological specialists. They've been shaped by generations of human selection. A wild zebra hasn't. And that brings us to something much bigger about human history. Humans didn't domesticate animals randomly. We didn't simply look around the world and ask, which animals can we eat? We asked a much more important question without necessarily realizing it. Which animals can live with us? That distinction explains a lot. There are thousands of wild animal species humans could theoretically eat, but only a small number became major domesticated livestock. Why? Because domestication requires a very unusual combination of traits. The animal needs to reproduce reasonably well in captivity. It needs to tolerate humans. It needs to eat something humans can provide. It shouldn't be ridiculously dangerous. It shouldn't panic every time someone approaches it. And ideally, it should have some useful product. Milk, meat, wool, leather, labor. Cattle checked an incredible number of those boxes. Zebras checked far fewer. And horses show us something fascinating. They're also members of the genus Equus. So zebras and horses are relatively close relatives. Humans successfully domesticated horses. We used them for transportation, agriculture, warfare, communication, trade. Entire civilizations depended on them. So why didn't the zebra become the African equivalent of the horse? Because being related to a domesticated animal doesn't mean you have the same temperament. Evolution doesn't care whether two animals look similar. Two species can share a common ancestor and still evolve dramatically different behaviors. The zebra's environment rewarded extreme vigilance and rapid escape. The domestic horse's evolutionary history and later human selection produced an animal that became much more useful as a partner. The zebra stayed wild. And that difference is enormous. Now, here's the really strange part. People have actually investigated zebra milk. Scientists can analyze its proteins, fats, sugars, minerals, and other components. And zebra milk has attracted interest, partly because of its unusual composition. It's not just an exotic curiosity. Milk from different mammals can tell researchers how evolution adapts nutrition to different babies and environments. So zebra milk can teach us something, even if nobody is putting it in your morning coffee. And historically, humans have consumed milk from other unusual animals. People have drunk horse milk. Camel milk is important in some cultures. Yak milk is used in parts of Asia. Reindeer milk has been consumed by northern peoples. So there's nothing inherently strange about drinking milk from a non-cow. The real question is whether the animal makes it worthwhile. And that's where the zebra loses. Because imagine the entire chain. You need a female zebra. You need her to have a foal. You need her to produce milk. You need to get close enough to collect it. You need to do that repeatedly. You need to keep her healthy. And you need her not to decide that today is the day she turns your dairy farm into a demolition site. Meanwhile, a cow is standing there, eating grass, producing enormous quantities of milk, and generally tolerating the arrangement. From an evolutionary and economic perspective, the winner is obvious. But there's one final detail that makes this even more interesting. The fact that we don't drink zebra milk isn't really a story about milk. It's a story about selection. Humans didn't simply adapt animals to our world. We changed the animals themselves. Every time ancient farmers chose a calmer cow instead of an aggressive one, every time they kept the animal that produced more milk, every time they bred the sheep that tolerated handling, they were changing the future population. They were conducting evolution without knowing the word genetics. And after thousands of years, the result was astonishing. The animals around us became animals that fit human civilization. Zebras didn't. So why don't we drink zebra milk? Because the milk was never the real obstacle. The obstacle was getting the animal that produces it to cooperate. A zebra can give milk to a foal. Humans can technically drink that milk, but turning zebras into cows would require thousands of years of selective breeding, enormous effort, and a very good reason to start. And humans already had cows. So nature gave us a strange situation. The zebra had milk, humans could drink it, but the zebra itself basically said, "You're going to have to catch me first." And that's probably why your supermarket has 20 kinds of cow milk and absolutely zero zebra milk.